Hello vinyl community, Graham Allen, North London. Today just going to be doing something partly the same, partly different. I'm going to be looking at a few books that I found really useful for looking at music. In my case it tends to be progressive rock music, often from other countries. I'll show a book that was actually written in the UK. It's a reference book for Italian progressive rock. It's a really incredible book. But first I'm just going to show a couple of things that I've been playing, kind of spinning, and then a couple of finds. And I just want to talk about a band I did mention. I got the first album off Discogs quite recently, which is Tritonus, a German progressive rock trio. And I got their debut album recently as well in Amsterdam on a trip there, and I'm just loving spinning them. And I've also got a CD which I just want to mention as well, partly because sometimes the times we're in music, finding music in some ways is kind of easy because of Discogs and things like eBay, but it also just delivers up absolute delights sometimes when you're just looking through things. And I found these two vinyl albums, but going on to Discogs I didn't realise there was a live CD that came out quite recently, and I'm going to mention that as well, so I'll talk to you about that. So first of all, a guy that's been doing quite a few interviews recently to promotes a live album with Derek Sherinian from the band Dream Theater, although he left Dream Theater a long time ago and has sort of delved since into sort of progressive fusion. Simon Phillips people may know, a really well-known UK drummer, rock and jazz fusion drummer. Played with Toto for almost 20 years. He's played with The Who, played a lot with people like Jeff Beck, played on a Judas Priest album. But this is an album I've been spinning recently just because he's been doing a lot of interviews to promote his newish album with Derek Sherinian. I got this in 1988 and it's quite hard to find it. It's his band Protocol, which he put on ice for many years, I think 20 plus years, and then rejuvenated a few years ago. And the band plays live quite a lot. This was his initial outing, which just has him playing all the instruments quite incredibly. There's a lot of sort of computer keyboard sounds on this. It's 1988, sounds quite programmed in places. The drumming is absolutely stellar, incredible, beautifully recorded as you'd expect with Simon. And some of these compositions he still plays in band format, but it's a great album, a real kind of drummer's prog fusion album. I'll just show you the kit. There's a great picture of the kit there that he plays. He still plays this now. He's one of these guys that hasn't slimmed back. The big, large, multi-tom kit went out of fashion quite a long time ago, often associated with the 70s and the 80s. But he carts this around with whoever is playing, gigantic Tama double kit. He's a fantastic double bass drummer. There he is, and this is just a wonderful record on his own label, which was called Food for Thought. I don't know if there's been any other albums released on that. So that's Simon Phillips Protocol, 1988. In a slightly similar vein is Alphonse Muzon, who is a fusion drummer. Although he's played some straight jazz as well. He played in Weather Report, he played with Jaco Pastorius, he played in 11th House, an early jazz fusion outfit, but he also had a pretty successful solo career. Like a lot of people, he started off with very fiery, busy fusion, and then sort of mellowed a little bit as it got towards the 80s and included vocals and things like that. That's not really my cup of tea, but this is a great album. It's called Virtue, and it has the stupendous Muzon drum suite, which is in 4 parts, and is just a blazing drum frenzy, really, to top off the album. But there's some great funky tracks as well, one called Master Funk. Nyctophobia is a terrific track, and there's some great players on here. There's a keyboard player called Stu Goldberg, who's pretty well known, and just some fantastic funky bass playing, great sax playing as well. This is on the PA USA label, which people might know is quite well known for these kind of era of fusion albums. There it is. So really great album, very busy, heavy drumming. Then something a bit mellower on the ECM label, which of course often has a very distinct, much more pastoral kind of sound. And this is the Gary Burton Quartet with Eberhard Weber, Passengers. The main reason I picked this up was actually for Eberhard Weber. I've mentioned him before. He's a bass virtuoso. He plays an unusual customized cello style bass with no frets, and it gives a lovely liquid rubbery melodic sound, quite spacey at times. He's very distinctive. All his work is kind of on the ECM label, so he fits with them perfectly. But this is a great album, and in fact one of my favourite tracks on here, as Gary Burton, is Midwestern Night's Dream, which was actually, I should say Pat Metheny is on this as well for guitar fans. Excuse me, we've got a rumble of thunder here in the UK. It's pouring down at the moment. So Pat Metheny is on this, and Danny Gottlieb on drums. Steve Swallow also does some bass on this. But the track Midwestern Night's Dream, people might know from Pat Metheny's Bright Size Life debut album, which of course is also well known for jazzers because it's has Jaco Pastorius on bass. But they do a wonderful version of Midwestern Night's Dream on this. Really great album. Gary Burton, of course, on vibes. I really enjoy this. And of course, it's on the ECM label, people will know. More fusion drummers. This is Lenny White, and this is Venusian Summer. This came out in the late 70s and is a bit of a fusion classic. In fact, it very much overlaps with prog, progressive rock. Quite keyboard dominated at times. The Venusian Summer Suite, which, where are we? The Venusian Summer Suite, which closes out side one, is in 2 parts. The first part is actually just a beautiful build-up of multi-analog keyboards with no drumming as such. So it's very sort of spacey, and then goes into a typical Lenny White funky groove, odd meter. So there's lots of funky bass on this. People that like Billy Cobham would enjoy this, and Alphonse Muzon. And in fact, Lenny White really here is a triumvirate of just brilliant jazz fusion players. He sometimes is a little bit in the shadow of Billy Cobham, but Lenny White was a phenomenal player who made his name with Return to Forever, with Stanley Clarke and Chick Corea, of course, and Al Di Meola. This is just a terrific album, really good, funky fusion, some blazing guitar work on here, and that comes from, I should tell you, can't find it. Cannot find the guitar player. Ray Gomez is on here. And also, no, I can't find guitarists on here. How strange. David Sanchez plays some guitar on here. He's also a jazz fusion, great, plays keyboards and guitar on here. I can't believe I can't find the guitar players on here. Yeah, anyway, it's highly recommended. Lenny White, Venusian Summer, and this is on the Nempero Records label. So we've got the inner cover there, and it's Nempero Records. Okay, so I just wanted to now mention the debut album by Tritonus. I've been really excited finding this band. The way this worked with me is I've been looking up pretty obscure keyboard trio bands that play progressive rock. There's not that many of them. So I'm kind of going to places like, or going to the countries of Italy, Germany, sometimes Eastern European countries. I found a band from Czechoslovakia called Collegium Musicum. So Tritonus really, I suspect, looked at the template of Emerson, Lake and Palmer and tried to replicate it. So some people find it a little bit, not cheesy, but a bit, a kind of facsimile of a well-known band. There's other bands that have done this, of course. I think of Starcastle and Yes. There's been lots, and of course a lot that sounded like early Genesis, that sort of thing. So Tritonus, really, as you can tell from the cover, full-on keyboards, Hammond organ, mini Moog, string synthesizer, drums and bass, some guitar, a bit like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and vocals. And I just really like it. It's probably not the strongest in terms of composition, but there's some fantastic playing. They're really good musicians. Peter Seiler is the main guy here, and just very, very mid-70s progressive rock, keyboard dominated. If you like that kind of stuff, this is a fantastic band to seek out. And they are on, I mentioned this one, I think I mentioned the other album I've got behind me. They're on the Acanta label. I don't know that. I think it's a German label, pretty sure it will be. But just delighted to get that. I did pay quite a lot of money for that on Discogs, but I really wanted it. It's a great album. And this is the thing I was talking about earlier, when you sort of think about, long lost tapes, radio broadcasts, that kind of stuff that presumably just sit in the archives for a long time. And presumably at one stage people just thought, nobody's going to be interested in this. And Tritonus did a recording in a hotel in Bremen, Germany, or just outside Bremen, called Stag's Hotel. And the venue is quite well known. It hosted a lot of bands in the 70s. And I think quite often bands would record there, or they'd be recorded. And lo and behold, we have a live CD, which is about 75 minutes long, of Tritonus at the Stag Hotel. It's just great to have it. Most of the tracks from the first two albums, and then there's a couple of other tracks as well that they sort of premiered, presumably in the live set. So great to have that. It's a bit of a raw recording, to be honest with you, but it doesn't detract, and in fact sometimes adds to the excitement. There's lots of noodling on the Moog, which was kind of common back then. It was such a novel sort of sound for people, a bit like Emerson, Lake and Palmer. A lot of noodling at times, but that's just a great album. It's Tritonus live at the Stag Hotel. And this was released, I think it was 2016, and picked this up off Discogs. Okay, I'm just going to close out with some books that I use. This is probably the best one for referencing quite obscure progressive rock. It's quite well known for prog rock fans. It's called The Strawberry Bricks Guide to Progressive Rock. This is a revised and expanded edition, although there's a new edition which I'm due to get. It's by Charles Snyder, and it's just wonderful, absolutely thick with information. And what I like is it's not, it goes into some detail about particular releases, so you can look up the year and it will have a number of albums from that year by all sorts of bands. And I like it because it's very pan-global, if you like, and particularly pan-European. So there's lots of countries in Europe represented, of course the States as well. But it's just been terrific for looking stuff up. So it's got all the usual suspects, but it's also got some very, very left field bands in there, and I found that really useful. Just in terms of delving deeper into progressive rock, we've got Ed McCann, who's also done a fantastic book on Emerson, Lake and Palmer, but he came out with Rocking the Classics, English progressive rock and the counterculture. And I'm thinking, like a lot of people, I love it when they roll in the cultural times, the cultural representation of different music. So, of course, it's been done a lot with things like punk and new wave, but this guy delves into what the culture of progressive rock is, and it's really well done. So that's a great read, Ed McCann, Rocking the Classics. There's a great series called The Golden Year of, and this is 1973, Golden Year of Progressive Rock by Jeffrey Folks. Superb little book. This is similar in a series that have got a lot of tracks as well by famous bands. So they just pick out all the albums and go through all the tracks. It's a great series, and this is one of the Sundry publications, which is a golden year of. And that's 1973 Progressive Rock, really good book. And this is very, very sort of specialist, but came out not that long ago, I think it was about 12 months ago. I'm not too keen on the cover, but it's called Fistful of Spaghetti. It's by Audio Publications, and it's by Stephen and Alan Freeman. I got it direct from their website, Encyclopedia of Italian Progressive Rock, but it incorporates experimental electronic music, and it's just amazingly detailed. They've done an amazing job. Just hundreds and hundreds of Italian bands represented. We've got a write-up about them, a kind of recommendation about the albums to go for. Then we've got details of the actual albums, release dates, personnel, track listing. Really superb book. I've used this a lot. So that's a Fistful of Spaghetti, Encyclopedia of Italian Progressive Rock. And then I just want to mention a friend of mine, Martin Hansen, and I know he sometimes watches the channel, and he's been a very prolific author. I'm not going to mention all the books he's been involved in, but I've got any books related to Emerson, Lake and Palmer and the Nice. He's been involved in. I've got, but the ones that I love, he co-authored this with George Forrester and Frank Askew, and Martin was an established writer when this came out. It was a bit of a labour of love for these guys. This was the first sort of musical biography that came out of ELP. I've got a signed copy there from Carl Palmer, Frank, Martin and George. This was just a wonderful book. It was the first one that really came out in detail. Martin's a great sort of historian and has got a fantastic eye for detail and a lovely turn of phrase in his writing. So that's one of my favourite books, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, a musical biography. He's also done a book on the Nice, and I'm just going to mention another connection of a musician that I'm very fond of, John Heisman, Colosseum, the drummer with Colosseum, wonderful drummer, unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. People will know him from Colosseum, Colosseum 2. And Martin did this absolutely superb book. It's called John Heisman's Journey of the Time Machine. The Time Machine was a Colosseum track, album by album. He often gets a forward, by the way, from Chris Welch, the eminent ex-Melody Maker writer and author. This is just terrific. Again, I love these books that go through discographies, basically, with details. I was lucky to get a couple of paragraphs included in this book from events where I met John Heisman myself at a drum clinic. But this is wonderful, and it's got some really obscure releases that Heisman played on. It's got Barbara Thompson's Paraphernalia, who's married to Barbara Thompson, so it's got all of their albums. United Rock and Jazz Ensemble, Colosseum 2, lots of jazz fusion releases. But it's also got some really obscure stuff. So I've got a solo album by John Heisman, which is live recordings of drum solos. And there's a write-up about that in this. So Martin did a wonderful job there with John. And this came out, I think it was about a couple of years ago. Really wonderful, recommended it if you're into Colosseum and John Heisman in particular. And Martin Hansen's a great writer. And just as well as a shout out to him, I hope he's feeling a bit better. I think he's had a pretty tough year health-wise, and I wish him well anyway, because he's been in touch with me recently. So that's it for this session, and see you all soon. Bye-bye.